Are companies that take responsibility and sustainability seriously more successful than others? Does responsible innovation lead to competitive advantage? Is there a business case for responsible innovation? In this session, we will discuss these questions with top-level policymakers and business leaders. My name is André Martinuzzi. I'm head of the Institute for Managing Sustainability in Vienna, where we coordinated a major EU-funded project on responsible innovation for the last 3 years, called Living Innovation. In the name of our project partners, I would like to thank the organizers of the Responsible Innovation Summit for the opportunity to organizing this session today. However, this is not all. Tomorrow we will run an interactive afternoon workshop on how to put responsible innovation into practice. On Thursday, an expert discussion on inclusive innovation, and on Friday, a debate with a youth panel on living in a smart future. So, do not miss these sessions. What was the Living Innovation project about? It was about exploring the benefits and opportunities of responsible innovation in industry. Together with major companies such as Infineon, Siemens, Telefonica, Atos, Ericsson, and Ottobock, we adapted well-established innovation management tools to aspects of responsibility and sustainability. We tested them in a series of live and online events, developed innovative solutions in the area of smart homes and smart health, and can now present them in a series of showcases. We also developed a toolbox for co-creation that you can download for free. You can find the link in the chat. I could tell you a lot more about these inspiring 3 years, but I do not want to spoil your time as you're waiting for the top-level debate. So let me briefly introduce our panel. Margarete Schramberg worked in senior management at leading IT companies and was CEO of the market-leading telecom company in Austria. In 2017, she was appointed Austria's Federal Minister for Digital and Economic Affairs, was a member of the National Council from 2019 to 2020, and was appointed as Federal Minister for Digital and Economic Affairs in January 2020. Sabine Herrlichka is Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technology Officer at Infineon Austria. She's Vice Chair of the Austrian Council for Research and Technology Development, and she's Vice President of the Federation of Austrian Industries. In 2018, she was elected chair of the governing board for a €5 billion public-private partnership in the electronic components and systems sector. Hermann Erlach is the general manager of Microsoft Austria. Before joining Microsoft, he held management positions at international management consultancies and at SAP. At Microsoft, he acted as Chief Operating Officer, Digital Transformation Lead, and spokesperson on innovation topics. Thank you very much for taking the time and for coming to VU Vienna. It's a great honor to have you here today and to discuss with you aspects of responsible innovation, the business case for responsible innovation, and how responsible innovation affects competitiveness. Competitiveness of individual companies such as Infineon and Microsoft, but also competitiveness on a national level, so competitiveness of a business location like Austria or like Europe. When we discuss responsible innovation, we will touch upon 4 aspects: responsibility, sustainability, digitalization, and success. All of these 4 aspects are of high importance for high-level decision makers as you are. So let me start by asking you, Minister Schramberg, the first question. The Austrian government announced a tax reform a few days ago, combining a CO2 emission tax with major tax breaks. What effects on competitiveness, on the business location Austria, but also on sustainability do you expect?
Well, for us it was important to talk first about CO2 pricing, because I think that is what is more reflects what it is. Because what we plan and what we are going to do is we will take the whole income from the CO2 pricing, which will be there, and reinvest it into Austria, especially in intra-Austrian businesses, but also into the general situation of Austrian citizens. And I think this is key to a success of such a CO2 pricing mechanism. If you price CO2 and do not take it and reinvest it into the economy, you have most probably negative effects. So it does not make sense to invest such an income, for example, in the healthcare system. It should not disappear in education system, but it should be reallocated to Austria as an economy, and this is what we did. So it's about 18 billion savings on taxes that we are planning. So for both for the individuals, this is first of all to increase demand. I'm a strong believer in an old rule: the more money you have available, the more you can spend. So we will decrease taxes for the low income. Second, we will decrease taxes for companies. Körperschaftssteuer, corporate income tax is important to send a sign that we will reduce taxes here. I'm convinced that exactly now we need to reduce taxes for the companies and individuals in order to stimulate growth. And by growth, we will finance the tax deficit, and we will not be able to finance it with additional tax increases. What we also have in our package is that energy-intensive companies should be compensated, at least for a certain period of time. We do not want carbon leakage, so companies, especially production companies leaving Europe, would be really difficult for Europe. And I know I'm of the opinion that the European Commission has a key role to play here in it. I have been part of IT industry for many, many years, 22 years actually, before I went into politics, and I have seen this IT company leaving, the European-based IT companies leaving. And this is again a risk knocking at our door with the Green Deal. We can avoid it, but we need to take countermeasures, and carbon border adjustment is just one of the instruments we need to apply. I would see it otherwise. I would see it as one of the biggest risks of companies leaving Europe. We cannot afford this. This should not happen and is not allowed to happen, because we will lose jobs.
Infineon is one of Austria's strongest research companies, and it's of high importance for Austria as a business location. Infineon 1 month ago opened its new chip factory, a 1.6 billion euro investment, and one of the biggest projects in the IT manufacturing sector in Europe. What aspects of responsibility and sustainability did you consider in this huge investment?
The core of our investment is the manufacturing in high volume, high tech, high volume, as we say, energy saving chips. So these are microelectronics products that contribute to saving CO2. Just to give you an idea, our current manufacturing capacity in Austria, not including the new manufacturing site, but our current includes some 8.5 billion chips last year, with which we are able to save 9 million tons of CO2. 9 million tons of CO2, this is roughly a bit more than 60% of annual CO2 emissions by the entire Austrian automotive sector. So a lot. So number one is responsibility, contribution to sustainability, to reaching the climate targets. And then, of course, we have been creating jobs over the years, despite crisis. Even during the corona pandemic, we were able to create some 200 jobs. Infineon Austria has some 4,700 employees, multiplied with the families. So this is a huge contribution, and this creates opportunities for people. And the third aspect, the majority of these jobs are high quality jobs. So actually we represent a company that stands for, let's say, the knowledge the knowledge economy, so to speak. What we have been talking about for years, that we want to develop Europe towards the knowledge economy, knowledge society. We are a representative of this concept becoming reality. So we are research intense, we are high-tech manufacturer, we serve global clients out of Austria. So this is actually also an image becoming reality of what a good future could look like in Europe.
You said your chips will contribute to saving CO2 emissions. Are these very specific chips, or is it just digitalization in general that saves energy consumption?
On the one hand, we enable digitalization because microelectronics links the analog and the digital world. So without microelectronics, no digitalization, as simple as that. On the other hand, our chips are special. Not every chip is the same. So we are not producing applications for microprocessors. The majority of our chips do not go into this direction, but we are in, as experts say, power electronics. So our chips that we manufacture in particular contribute to saving energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is one of our core areas of application, together with applications in automotive, for instance, or data, the data world, or security. But the core of our competence, the majority of our competence, is what you find in energy efficiency applications, in the various applications from industry to every one of us in various products.
Are these chips manufactured on demand, or are they manufactured just as such and then sold on world markets?
The majority is manufactured on demand. However, we also we are the most research intense company in Austria and a major R&D player also in Europe. So we do have, of course, a lot of products also in development, a lot of technologies in development. So again, it's kind of a balance.
So let's move from the IT manufacturing to the software sector, to the IT service and software sector. Microsoft also has great plans and will establish its first cloud region in Austria. Over 4 years, €1 billion will be invested into cloud infrastructure and data centers. What aspects of responsibility and sustainability will you or did you consider with this huge investment?
Thank you first for the invitation. Yes, I'm super happy as an Austrian that we are investing in Austria heavily, more or less in 4 very important areas going forward. The first area is skilling. That's super important that we as a country, that we are adopting more digital skills, but not only digital skills. The second one is sustainability. Digitalization and sustainability are like twins. Yeah? They need each other to have impact. The third area is really digital platforms. We think that especially small and medium customers in Austria, they need scalable and secure digital platforms. And the fourth pillar is around data protection, security and compliance and trust. These are the areas where we are heavily investing in Austria. And you've mentioned already our data center region. This is a region consisting of 3 data centers here in Austria, major investment. And it's not only about infrastructure, it's also about bringing microservices, digitalization to Austria, because this is highly needed in order to accelerate digitalization. We see that especially smaller customers in Austria, they cannot afford having these skills or bringing people on board for cybercrime, for artificial intelligence. So we are here to help, here to support the economy in Austria.
Does it mean in the future that I can choose where my data is stored and say, I do not just prefer, let's say, meat from Austria and apples from Austria. I want to have my data stored in Austria.
Yes.
That's what it's about.
You can do it, but you need to be careful whether you're asking for it or not. Because there are different scenarios, especially our international, also commercial customers. They are not asking to have something local. They want international data flow, and they do not need this sort of local requirements. But in some areas, of course, we are open to discuss it.
Maybe I want to add here something. Of course, we need to work on a European cloud. This is what we do. Definitely, Europe has to get more resilience. It's not your fault or Microsoft's fault. It's about that Europe lost a lot of its technology companies because they were not protected in the past. That was true. So in the 80s and 90s and even now there is a sell-off of IT companies and was a sell-off of IT companies, which was due to, in my opinion, a mistake. And I'm happy that the Commission has now at least a little bit turned their mind. We need more FDI screening for direct investment screening and investment control. That is what is needed because we are not on a level playing field. On the second side, of course, we need European players in the IT sector, and they are not big enough. They of course cannot compete with a Microsoft or other Oracle and other mainly US-based companies, IBM and so on. So these companies, they need our support, our government support, and therefore we have launched a project which is called Gaia-X in Europe. In Austria, it's called Austrian Cloud. France, I was in France just a few days ago. They have launched the so-called Le Bleu, that is with Orange, and Microsoft is behind it, and Google has now also a partnership with somebody else. We need the data here, and we need the data to be protected, to be handed over to any government, be it Chinese governments, US governments, whatever governments in the world. And also to use the solutions in the long term in the public sector, we will need a solution for Europe and for European governments. And the data is one of the key assets that we have. And we need to use it. We need more to use it than we did before. We have too many barriers inside Europe. We need a real single digital market. That is what's being worked on, and the next digital acts, I think, are key for Europe to go a next step in more independence, data sovereignty, and also to push European companies to a next level in their offers to the market.
You said there are barriers. What kind of barriers? Regulation barriers? Barriers regarding financial markets?
Well, Europe always says it's a single market, but it's not yet completed, the single market. So let's take in certain areas of handcrafts, it's not allowed to sell a different type of products in one market. We have a lot of restrictions and tend to be over-regulated. And I think we should be less regulated inside and more on a level playing field with US and China on the outside. So what we need is more investment protection of European companies in China, and US. We have a good cooperation there, but vis-a-vis other markets like China, we do not have this protection. So our view needs to go outside and less barriers inside. We don't need the barriers. COVID has shown us when we put up the borders, like France and Germany did in the COVID crisis, this is bad for our economy, it's bad for our growth, and it weakens Europe instead of strengthening it.
The COVID crisis showed us how low was the resilience of certain supply chains, and the shortage of chip production and other goods now show us how easy it was that these supply chains got in trouble. Is digitalization, is responsible innovation key for ensuring this resilience? How could we increase the resilience of supply chains?
I think it was a great wake-up call, and what we said, and remember that we had talks before, and we're always talking about this, that this is key for Europe, coming from some sort of same industry with me, 22 years in IT. We now the Commission is working on the European Chips Act, exactly, and the European Chips Act is key. Yeah, we at least have now a target: 20% should be produced inside Europe. This has never been there before, and I think this is key. We on the 15th of October in Austria we will have a round table, and there we will discuss and want to create a chip charter to put our common view together, businesses and government, on the table, shoulder by shoulder, vis-a-vis the European Commission. There is no way out other than producing more in Europe, in smart, automized, digitalized, new types. If you had asked me in the 80s, maybe I would have said something different, but time has changed. And we should not be naive. And what China is doing, we can read it. We can read it in their program, what their plan is. So why should we be naive and not react and invest in Europe with important projects of common European interest, setting those up, putting money inside? My opinion, both individual states and Europe as a Commission needs to help in this transformation. This is about frame conditions, but it's also about money, because China is also putting money inside. They are subsidizing for a long period of time tech companies. It took us some time, I think, on European level to understand what is really happening, and now it's more than time to react. So I'm happy with the European Chips Act and the intention now to really focus on it.
If Europe would like to increase its production capacity to 20%, as you said, how many factories, as the Infineon factories, do we need to achieve that?
This is not really the question, because chip is not like chip. Yeah. So the question is, what kind of microelectronics, in what sectors in particular? So together with some of the European companies, we argue that it makes a lot of sense to invest, increase the capacity in those areas where we do have already leadership. Because in microelectronics, we have most likely the toughest competition at all, because it's so much a global industry, and the competition has been going on for decades. In many areas, this has been really a competition almost exclusively on price, and therefore the majority or a huge part was shifted to Asia. Now, we as Infineon and two others, we are a European headquartered company. So we had to differentiate based on costs, plus much more on innovation, which means we distinguish, we differentiate ourselves, of course, based on a solid cost fundament, plus being a driver and developing ourselves as driver in innovation. And therefore, we argue that European investments have to build on our global leadership. Whereas on the other hand, where we have to catch up, we would need to have invest billions, and it would take years to get close to the global competition that is currently not in Europe. And this is a question of a competitive strategy to be developed. And that has to be the basis in order to be able to get a manufacturing share of, say, 20%. Our current level is around 6, 7, 8%. And that has not changed too much over the last years.
So it's not about mass production. This is what also you mean. It's about the high-end, high-level, very innovative part. I think we need to be always just one step ahead.
Yeah, and it's mass production. What we do in Villach, the core of our manufacturing is innovation, but we are bringing this innovation into mass production in order to serve the global market out of Carinthia, Austria, Europe. And in going back, because that was also an element of your question, my first presentations on technology sovereignty date back to 2015-16. And at European level, there were a lot of people who had a long-term perspective, because going back to 2008-9, we had discussions on key enabling technologies, microelectronics or biotechnology at that time having been mentioned. And then looking at the global landscape, out of the 20 largest microelectronics companies, only 3 were controlled out of Europe, even before the pandemic. And this for a sector where you find the products in basically every good that you are using, in your smartphone, in your car, if you take the metro, for instance. Yeah, so this level of dependency was already there. And in this case, one has to say, thanks to the pandemic, it became very obvious. And now, again, people focus on that, and we discuss a chip alliance, we discuss a CHIPS Act. But, and that's the final thought for this round from my side, we have to put our strengths together, because China, for instance, invests more on the import of chips as on oil, for instance. Yeah? China plans to invest some 160 billion into the setup of its own high-tech chip industry. So it's not, my intention is not to create, let's say, fear, but to even increase and further increase and accelerate this sense of urgency.
I can only agree. I think there is no black and white. We are partnering with all the European institutions, and we are also participating heavily in this discussion. This discussion is also needed. I consider that Microsoft Austria is also an Austrian company with 5,000 local partners and a massive impact here. And I think we need to discuss what is our space of innovation going forward here in Austria. Because if you think about technology and digitalization, or technology per se, in some areas like for example, cloud, the train has left the station 15 years ago, and there's no way to catch up. This is not a statement from Microsoft, but if we think that we can catch up here as EU or Austria or France, we have no chance. No chance. Also not in the area of artificial intelligence. So we really need to discuss what is the sweet spot for us as Europeans, and what is the sweet spot for Austria, because it's not leading technology anymore, not in this area.
So if it's not artificial intelligence and cloud, what are the sweet spots? What are the subsectors of digitalization where Europe could have this kind of leading position in the global competition?
There are great things going on also in Austria. We are currently ramping up a big initiative called Mach heute, morgen möglich, which means more or less make tomorrow possible today. This will be a strong impulse after Corona. And a lot of our customers and also partners, Austrian partners, will showcase their innovation in the area of sustainability and also digitalization, because it's already going on. But it's going on one level higher. It's not going on in the infrastructure base, because this is going to cloud anyway, wherever the cloud sits. But it's going really, it's the intellectual property they do have. It's not about commodity services anymore.
But I would like to add here something. Europe is not always being good in B2C, but always good in business to business. So I think here is also the key area for us. And I don't think that the train in AI has completely disappeared. Yes, in consumer topic, yes. But if we say it's completely disappeared, then we give up and say, okay, we give everything to the US and we give everything to China. This will not happen. And therefore we are looking for B2B that is a sweet spot. If you ask me, coming also from that sector, originally this is somewhere where Europe can lead the game. And when I talk about data, I'm not talking about consumer data. I'm not talking about Facebook and Instagram. I'm talking about machine to machine. So here there is still room, because when I look at production sites in China or in Korea, for example, they're very big companies normally that do this. What Europe is leading is in smart, smaller manufacturing units. And this is something where we always have been good in. If you look at European companies, they're highly innovative in family constructions and are able to produce in smaller, smarter units close to the customer. Now we do have all the technologies we need to even enhance this smart, decentralized production. And in my view, there is one of these sweet spots in it for us. What we need to do is get industry work together, because there are still silos and they have not yet shared data. You need this data sharing, work with digital twins and data lakes, so that the startups and other scientists who are working on this topic have enough data available. Yeah? And this is also true for there's a big race in the automotive sector, of course, and who will drive the first car, as it is now autonomous driving, will drive all the cars. So what we need is also to have frame conditions which enable European car producers to use this. Here we are falling back, because the US producers, they have much more freedom in it, a much better, bigger single market, and more possibilities to work with data. So it is a challenge, but in my view, it's one of the sweet spots, B2B.
Mm-hmm. There's been a substantial debate in science if responsible innovation could also be such a competitive advantage on corporate level, but also national level or EU level. What does responsible innovation actually mean, and what does it bring? We have scientific evidence that it brings more and better ideas. It brings more societal acceptance of technologies. For example, for groundbreaking technologies as artificial intelligence, there's a substantial debate if we lose people on this way, if there are some fears or myths about artificial intelligence that might undermine the acceptance of this technology. And that responsible innovation is also an advantage in the competition for best brains. So that if a company is committed to responsible innovation, it has better access to highly qualified staff. Do you share this view in your experience as a minister and as top managers?
I think there is a clear business case for investing in that topic, and you can see it. One of the big reasons why Microsoft is investing in Austria is this green energy. Yeah? We are investing here with our data center because Austria has this form of green energy, and we want to be we want to power all our data centers with green energy by 2025. Yeah? So there's a clear business case, and this is one of the reasons, not the only one, why Microsoft is investing here in Austria.
Yeah, this issue of sustainability, for sure. I would even say responsible innovation, and it's this kind of purpose orientation. I want to have a job with a purpose. It's not just a job. There are special jobs I would never ever do because I don't see the purpose. And on the other hand, talking about Infineon and so many other companies, we do have a purpose. Like in our case, we are not just a high-tech company, but with our technologies we provide answers to those major global challenges like greening, like security, making life easier for people. So this is a core element. And the other thought I want to share is also this kind of how we work together. Diversity. Kind of a buzzword, but so true, and even more true. And diversity in the sense of different cultures, different nationalities, gender, age, different capabilities. And this is also a very strong component of responsibility.
Minister Schwamberg, you worked before you were appointed Minister for Digital and Economic Affairs as a CEO of a leading Austrian telecom company. So you were responsible for a large company, and now you work as a minister. How did you perceive this different perspective as a business leader and as a minister? Did it change your view, changing your position?
Well, I've been working 22 years in IT industry and 15 years in IT, the last 2 years in telco. What I have seen and what I've learned, but I'm sure you're sharing this with me, it is only by working together that we can manage these difficult and complex challenges of today's world. It's not politics who can do this alone, and also business is not. It needs to be this work together. However, I find it good to have some background, because when we talk to each other and we talk about a company called ARM, which is about to be sold they want to be sold to a US-based chip manufacturer, we are talking the same language. And I think the understanding is really good, and also that we take these challenges together. And this is what I feel in this respect. Concerning your previous topic, R&D, I think Austria is a highly innovative country. We're number 7. Surprisingly, I was in France and in Italy. They always think that they don't think that Austria is so far ahead. We're number 2 in R&D spending. Only Sweden is before us, and that is also in cooperation. It's a co-spending of companies and of tax money, actually. And that is, I think, that makes us so successful also in this way. What we would even need more is have more transfer of basic science into real businesses. So I'm not so much worried about applied science, because that is always going hand in hand. But I'm more about basic research, and here we need we are in concrete talks that we can transfer more ideas into concrete business ideas from basic research. I think here we can catch up still a little bit. But it's all about working together. It's teamwork, and that's the only way it works.
You all mentioned this collaboration of science, policy, business. What kind of platforms could we establish, or should we establish, to improve this collaboration? And could we bring in people as well, citizens, into these processes?
Well, I think first of all, it's important that we train our next generation to be the future scientists, and especially the young girls. And I think this is also something we want heavily. And you have this wonderful kindergarten established in your company, so you have to ask Sabine Herrlichke about that one. And we need new university, like the new digital university that will be built in Linz. We need to improve all the different curricula into the right direction, innovation, digitization, and that needs to be there in all the different jobs. If you do an apprenticeship, you need to have digital part inside, irrespective of what you learn, because you will always use this or need this. Yeah, that's it. We need to put focus on skilled people, and that is this digital program for our education. It's a little bit late to some extent. Of course, I would have liked to have it 20 years ago. But finally we did it, and I'm happy that I was the main negotiator for this education part and not for the economic part. So there is digital in every second word in there, and now we are in the implementation.
Mm-hmm. I completely understand that designing microchips is not a participatory exercise where you can ask some neighbors to come in and to jointly design them, for sure. But is there a role for citizens in innovation in your area?
I think what we have been discussing at European level for the last couple of years, the missions, they are a perfect example. Missions are programs that do have a political goal, like for instance 100 CO2 neutral cities. And missions build on the fact that all the actors get together. It has a component of research, of demonstration, of implementation, of broader participation. And therefore, I'm really waiting almost every day to see the missions getting started. And I would hope that many Austrian cities are eager to participate here. 100 CO2 neutral cities by 2030. That's almost tomorrow. Yeah? And of course we are ready to contribute. But here I would also expect an active participation of everyone, because it's about our joint cities, for instance. And there are some more missions on the way. And they have been particularly set up to offer this kind of platform of jointly implementing.
CO2 neutral is one objective. I heard that Microsoft even goes one step further to pay back all CO2 emissions Microsoft had during the last years.
Interesting calculation, yeah.
How will this work?
There is a big ambition in place. Yeah, this is really we're setting very aggressive targets in that area to recover more or less everything we emissioned to the world. As Microsoft has an ecosystem which is pretty bold, but there are also other great things going on, like in our data centers. We are recycling all the entire hardware immediately in the data center. Yeah, so I think there is a cloud infrastructure will play a major role going forward. I've heard in Alpbach a couple of weeks ago that at the moment 1% of global carbon emissions is linked, or energy consumption, is linked to cloud data centers. And in the next 15 years it will go up to 30%. Yeah, so there's a job to do here.
Would you say that doing well by doing good is a sentence for your business or for Europe that would mirror this idea? To say responsible innovation is really a key factor of success.
To a large part has this been integrated into the regular company business, and call it responsible innovation, call it corporate social responsibility. I mean, there is a huge awareness that companies, as every other stakeholder, are an active part of the society. They do their business, they fulfill their mission, they interact, they have their employees. As such, they interact with society. Yes, they are interconnected. That's what they should do, and what many of them do. And this includes the business activity as such, with the products that contribute, for instance, to sustainability, or others to good jobs, to attractive jobs, or the variety of educational activities that many companies are involved in, including mine. So yes, therefore I'm very much in favor of perceiving companies as part of our society, and not as sometimes presented also in the media. There are the companies and there are the employees or society. Yes, we are one society.
Yes. Yeah. And there is one thing is, I think what politics needs to be careful not to think they understand what solutions are the best for the future. It needs to be technology agnostic. It needs to be in a way that there is competition between different technologies, because politics does not know. Even CEOs sometimes do not know what will be the key driving factor in innovation. Innovation is disruptive. We didn't know that the touchscreen, when the basics for it were invented in 1973 in CERN, nobody knew that we will have it in our pockets as a supercomputer. So that is like in science fiction. If you had told them in the 76, they would say, yeah, it's science fiction. But it's now reality. And we all didn't know. The same true for microwave. Do you like it or not like it? That's the same. So you need to leave to scientists the freedom to research into the different areas and bring this to life. I'm very much count on disruptive innovation because that has always been, when you put so much money inside, you will develop something which you do not know that it is the basis for something that will resolve all our topics in 50 years. So politics should put a framework, but should not interfere with the different type of technologies. So the engine, the engine with that is still polluting at the moment might be, I'm not against the engine, I'm against the CO2 which is getting out. But if I prohibit everything, any research on the engine, maybe I'm forbidding or cutting on some result which would be on that way. I was talking to Professor List on that, and he very much insisted on this. We do not know, especially not in politics, what will drive us, and he will help us in the future.
But isn't politics setting these kind of agendas simply by allocating money? If we think about the European Research Programme, which is a 100 billion euro funding program, it goes into certain areas. By giving money, by allocating money, policy is setting such kind of priorities.
Yes, of course, that is that you can have a certain incentives to go into a certain direction. But in some countries it boils down to the fact that politicians think they know what better technology is applied. And that I'm not convinced of. We need frame conditions for let's take the investment bonus that we had. We were incentivizing both environmental protection, we were incentivizing digital transformation, and of course, we had a basic program for everything. Yeah, so even if you build a building, you get 7% incentive bonus. I think that is more incentivizing those topics than thinking that you know before the technology. It's about the frame, the big targets, the vision, as you have said, where we are going to. We want to live in a better environment, but in a safe environment. But it's not about boiling it down to the individual technology. I think this is not what politicians can do best.
In the Living Innovation Project, we had the slogan, co-creating, we will live in 2030. Sounds quite far away, but as you said, it's in a few minutes from now. At the end of our discussion about policy and business aspects, I would also like to ask you a personal question. How do you think will our living look like in 2030? What will be different?
First of all, we will not talk about digitalization because it's going to be so present. Yeah, it's going to be very natural. Second, hopefully, we will have built our societal processes on sustainability. Many more products, regulation, framework conditions that encourage behavior towards sustainability. And the third element is, I don't know, and I'm glad I don't know, because say almost 10 years from now, this is actually such a long time with innovation having accelerated over the last years. I think there are a lot of surprises in the pipeline, and it's up to us to make sure that these are good surprises, to the better. And last thought, education is so key. Education is so key, and education in the sense of not teaching about the past primarily, but teaching, sharing experiences on capabilities, making people fit to handle the opportunities of the future. And I think that's the challenge, and that's the adventure and the excitement.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell young people nowadays that are afraid of the future, that lost trust in future, to encourage them that this future is worth living and worth taking part in it?
I think they should not be afraid. Yeah, we've managed it somehow also in the past, and I think digitalization is a huge opportunity also for everybody. We need to make sure that the human being stays in the center of everything we are doing. It's not so much about technology, this is just an enabler, but it's really about the human being and what we can do going forward as human beings. And we need to protect data, we need to be on the safe side, we need to push innovation, but this is a massive opportunity also for the younger generation. Yeah. So I'm not afraid at all.
Mm-hmm. Did COVID change any of your perceptions regarding the future? The last 2 years were a game changer. Did it change your expectations?
Well, first of all, I think you're completely right. There's no need for fear, because if we look back a little bit longer, only 100 or 200 years or 300 years, which is just a very short time frame in this earth, we live now today better and healthier than ever before. And this is also true for areas which are really poor. So looking at China again, for example, the number of poor people has really heavily decreased in the last decade, I would say, in the last 10 years. And this is true for the whole world, even if the differences are still very big. Looking inside Europe and addressing European youth, it's about learning, and again learning. And it's I know that work-life balance is very much in the center of a lot of discussions. However, we need innovation in Europe, and it's only them who can solve the big problems of this earth. They have all the prerequisites. It's not the children which are risen in Nigeria or in South Africa or other countries which do not have such money for education. We have everything there. So the parts of the recipes are there. There is wealth in Europe. There is education in Europe. There is innovation in Europe. So they have all they can use for solving the big problems of this planet. For what I wish for in 10 years, that we do have both a clean and good environment and jobs, because without jobs in a region, it is very difficult to take care about the environment. We can see this, yeah. Countries and regions which have good growth, which have good jobs, they can take care and be innovative in this area, and it's all on their shoulders or all in their basket. Everything is there that it can be achieved. And looking only 200 years back, we have achieved so much. I'm convinced we can do also this. There is no need for fear. And also the discussions which are now about environment, they are sometimes fear-driven, and I think this does not help. What helps is to be there, to learn as much as they can, together with us, to solve the topics.
Today we've seen how diverse responsible innovation is implemented in policy and in business, which topics are of high importance for leading companies and for policymakers. Let me thank you very much for taking the time for this debate in the course of the Responsible Innovation Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
In a few moments, the floor will be open for your contributions and questions. What is the business case for responsible innovation? What role could responsible digitalization play for sustainable development? And what challenges lie ahead? These are the questions for the next half hour. Before we start our discussion now, let me share a few findings from the Living Innovation Project that could set the stage for discussing the business case for responsible innovation. Together with a group of world-leading companies, we developed a new narrative for responsible innovation that links key concepts of the RI debate, on the one hand, with the language and the rationality of businesses, on the other hand, and that also takes a broader view on societal needs and benefits. It consists of 3 key elements, and it links back to 20 years of discussion in the business sector, on the one hand, and 20 years of discussion about sustainable development and corporate responsibility on the other. So the first element is about responsibility for impact. It's about the question, do you innovate with a purpose? And do you innovate in a way that you consider potential risks and that you avoid negative societal impacts? We can draw on at least 30 years of experience with technology assessment and with foresight. It means on the one hand also to orientate the innovation towards needs of people, but this comes back with a second pillar. But the most important question is, what impacts will an innovation have? And this question is not new for companies, because this idea of responsibility for impact is a key element of corporate social responsibility. So in their language, they know that they are responsible for much more than profit, market shares, or growth. They know that they're responsible for their impacts, because corporate social responsibility is a key definition of the European Union of CSR, is know your impacts, improve the positive ones, reduce the negative ones. But it's a fact that this idea of corporate social responsibility trickled down to certain functional areas in companies during the last 10 years, into reporting, into strategic planning, into marketing, but not so much into innovation by now. However, I think it's a perfect link to link the language of a company, which is about corporate social responsibility, with our key ideas of precautionary principle in sustainable development and responsibility for impact in the ERI debate. Second element, it's innovating with the people and for the people. So it's about open innovation. It's about participatory aspects. We've seen in the chat already some of you claiming that it must be more open, it's more creative. You get better ideas, you get better fitting ideas, you get more ideas. The only problem is whom to involve and in which kind of processes to involve. So it's about co-creation, but with more people than the usual suspects. When you talk about the usual suspects, you talk about highly educated, urban, young, male techno nerds. In many cases, these are the lead users of new technologies. If you would like to involve a broader diversity of people, so not so well educated one, elderly people, people from poor families or poor areas, or even people with special needs, then it gets much more demanding to design these kind of co-creation processes. And then we have a third element, and this then touches upon the great challenges of our times, the great societal challenges, and also sustainable development. It's about co-designing whole systems. It's innovating on a higher level. It's about designing the systems we currently live in, because actually we live in a lot of systems: mobility system, food system, health system, financial system. And many of these systems were never designed on purpose. They simply emerged. And if we want to change them, we only can change them together. Policy, citizens, scientists, and the business sector. And I think this is also a very interesting idea for CEOs, for real top-level managers, that they are no longer just embedded into competitiveness, markets, regulations, but it's about co-creating whole systems together. So this was our understanding of the business case for innovation, linked to the societal benefits, linked to the key concepts we were discussing for many, many years. Now, I would like to know more about your view. We would like to know more about your view, and we will see how this discussion emerges. First of all, let's try it using the chat. Perhaps one of you, for one or the other of you, has your special experiences with the business case for responsible innovation. Perhaps you worked as innovation managers before, perhaps you worked as consultants, perhaps as scientists. Could you briefly share just a few words on your view on the business case for responsible? Not about what is responsible innovation, but how does it pay off? How can it be implemented in a company that it is an opportunity, not an additional threat? Any experiences that you would like to share in this case, please type them into the chat, and one or the other we would like to talk with you. So just a few words, not a few sentences, a few words on your view on the business case for responsible innovation. How does it pay off? Does it pay off at all? You could also note down, doesn't pay off, I don't see the point. If we consider responsibility aspects in innovation, what's in it for businesses? Anything you would like to share? I would like to address some of your comments, and I would like to address some of you. If you feel comfortable talking to me, please switch on your camera when I address you and talk to me, perhaps explain more in detail what you meant by this sentence. If you don't feel comfortable, then please don't switch on the camera and don't answer to my question, then I'll take the next one. Marco Turvinen from VTT, you wrote, in Finland, all bigger actors consider sustainability as only solid foundation for long-term value creation. Marco, how come that in Finland it works like that? What has Finland done that the big actors already are as mature as you described this?
Hello, everybody. I'm working as a senior scientist in VTT, Technical Research Center of Finland, and I have quite solid background also in large industrial corporations. But we are today discussing quite a lot with energy companies and their approach to environmental targets and sustainability. And they have really clear target setting for the future to be sustainable. And I think that their idea is actually that the customer is willing to purchase energy from sustainable energy companies, and it is just must. You cannot have any other approaches or options. It is a must.
But does it mean it only refers to energy companies? Other companies, other sectors as well as mature in Finland, or you're just talking about the energy sector and that's a very specific case because they know?
Yeah. Second, of course, is we have plenty of forest industry, and they have a really similar approach. And I think that they are forerunners in this sustainability issue, and SMEs are coming a little bit behind.
Mm-hmm.
But
they seem to be the leaders, so the ones that have something to do with CO2, with climate change, so the energy providers, the ones that had their business model of whatever, burning coal, burning gas, burning any kind of carbon, they know have to do something different, right?
Yes, yeah. Energy transition has started already, actually a couple of decades ago in Finland.
Are there any laggers, any other business sectors where you would say, when we talk about responsible innovation, these are the ones that really don't have a clue, or they duck and cover and they don't want to talk about this?
I think in Finland we are always emphasizing the environmental values, and if they are not taken into account, typically the companies or ecosystems, they don't get money for development work. Mm-hmm. So it is somehow in our DNA already. Mm-hmm. And we have plenty of government organizations which really put this sustainability issue as a main point.
Thank you very much for these interesting insights into the Finnish situation. Doug Gilbert, you said you worked on strongly sustainable business model canvas. Could you please give us a few insights on your experiences, how to build business cases for sustainable innovation?
Sure, happy to do that. So this is a Canadian effort. I'm not Canadian, I'm American, but I've worked with them quite a bit. It's out of the Ontario School for Design at one point in time. It's moved around different places, Guelph and that. We started with Osterwalder's idea of a business model canvas, and Anthony Upward, who did this for his master's thesis, expanded it. We've been through several versions of this over time. We even have an Excel-based calculator that you can do. We call it a book that you go in and you can calculate out these business cases. So it's actually a lot more straightforward than we think. Now, here's my health warning, or the cautionary warning about this. We do all these things within this paradigm of a financial system. So there's going to be lots of barriers that are out there that we don't yet see in terms of what are the total impacts or costs, if you want to call that, of environment. But I think this is a good step forward. It's kind of a complex thing. It takes a while to get into, but I think, and we're getting more adoption by it, but it takes a while to kind of get through the financial culture of the corporate world to be able to use this tool.
Is this tool applicable in all sectors, or is it sector specific?
We didn't design it to be sector specific. It's going to have sector preference in the sense that some sectors are going to want to use it more than others, particularly where I came out of chemicals, pharmaceuticals in a former life. And in that sector, it was pretty easy to figure out, where we needed to make changes, even though some of the changes were very painful. But some of the other sectors, I think, are lagging in terms of understanding their environmental impact. And I would actually point the finger quite much at tech. It really doesn't yet have a full understanding of its impact, particularly downstream, not just in manufacturing and production.
So the specific situation in Canada, is there any kind of policy framework that pushes forward for responsible innovation similar to Europe? Because in Europe for the last 10 years, there was a strong push from the European Commission that responsible innovation, responsible research and innovation is taken into account. Similar policy push in Canada?
There certainly is, and there's a move toward carbon pricing. Of course, there's internally, because Canada is a resource producing country, you can imagine the political back and forth that you get. Of course, you have that in the EU too, because you have Romania that's in that mix now. So, that the Western provinces, particularly the central Western provinces versus the greater Ontario area and Montreal, you have some very different politics, and it is more of a federation and less of a united states type of a model of governance.
And how did government push for responsible innovation? In Europe, they simply put it as a kind of prerequisite in research and innovation funding. Simply to say, if you want to get big money from Europe, you have to ensure that you're carrying out innovation in a responsible way. So was it linked to any kind of funding program in Canada as well?
In certain provincial programs, yes. Ontario, I think, has had definitely a leading position in that, and Ontario, is a big employment base, big population base.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Maurice Fedeli also noted down new business model innovation for sustainability. Maurice Fedeli, would you like to share some of your views and perhaps put them into relation to what we heard from Canada?
Yes, thanks. So similarly, we've been involved with the Strongest Sustainable Business Model Group, which was initiated by Anthony Upward, as mentioned earlier. And we've kind of, as part of our research team, we have about 25 people in that team. We've kind of built on top of that, where we've been able to link the business model of organization to the sustainability performance as a metric. So we've looked at a few different industries. For example, we've looked at the seafood industry and energy and a few others. The methodology itself is agnostic to the sort of industry that may be involved, but those are the ones that we've started off in terms of data that we've got. So we've been able to link answer the question, basically, which business model empirically is more sustainable than another, using the data from public data sources that have been audited statements, sustainability reports, that type of thing. So that's what we've been able to do there, but it is built very much on the flourishing business canvas and other sort of related technologies, part of the Strongly Sustainable Business Model Group, which actually now they're morphing into the Flourishing Enterprise Institute. They've actually just now in the process of changing their name.
You said here at the Thrive Project. Could you simply tell me what here is? I didn't get from which country you're.
So Thrive Project is, we represent in about 40 different countries around the world, but I'm based in Australia. And we've built AI machine learning technology that examines an organization based on their sustainability reports and so forth, to be able to establish what their business model is. And in terms of how that's done, just in simple terms, it uses business model patterns to match to an organization based on their reporting. So it's able to, over a period of time, that's how machine learning works, to refine its ability to accurately categorize what the business model is. So in the early days, we were getting like 64% accuracy. These days, we're more into 92%. And over time, as more data is fed in, we're getting more accurate business models.
Thank you very much. Emma Chen, you already switched on your camera and you noted that the ecosystem perspective is important, and you could provide us with a perspective from China, if I'm right.
Yes, yeah, thank you for asking me to explain more about my comments on the chat room. So actually, the ecosystem perspective is quite similar to Maury's new business model innovation, but the perspective is on ecosystem instead of the firm-centric view as before. And myself, I'm now a BBA student majoring in intelligent manufacturing management. And my research topic is actually about the business model driven by IoT from the ecosystem perspective. And from the ecosystem system perspective is actually to combine shared value for the stakeholders, identifying a sustainable problem and developing a product service portfolio that can solve that problem and then involve all stakeholders so that a sustainable value proposition is created to reshape the IoT-driven business models. I think this is like the mechanism to explain Maury's his share just a little minutes ago. Yeah, that's my point.
Thank you very much. Then we had from Fritz, I don't know his surname, that he highlighted it's just about circular economy. And this really touches upon my heart and soul because working in the sustainability area for many, many years, I would say, Fritz, I know who Fritz is.
and I even saw somebody who was at the business school with me, Doc Gilbert. It's funny, so after so many years to be at the seminar here and then meet the people after so many years. That's good, André.
So what about circular economy and the low costing currently?
I just wanted to see that as an example. We all know we have really high noon to do something on resource management. But when you see the progress, for instance, on circular economy, it's very slow. Why is it slow? Because still everything is compared to the old system. And the old system is virgin material, very low priced, low costs. Nobody knows if the costs are right. And I think there is a slight difference mentality between the guys in Scandinavia versus the guys here in Middle Europe, I'd say. And they have it in the DNA, as just the first speaker said. I mean, we have to be environmental concerned. And if we are not changing the evaluation systems, circular economy, as an example, will still be very slow. So we are talking right now about CO2 emissions. That's one factor clear. We have to talk about water consumption. We have to talk about soil degradation, ozone layer depletion, etc., etc. So we need a system which is, let's say, really measuring environmental impacts. Of course, this is so complex that nobody probably, except some research people, would understand it. But if we are not, let's say, make it to an obligation, for instance, in our business, for the retail, that they have to price these factors in and they have to promote other type of products, despite they are more expensive. Who cares? We will be slow in this kind of movement. For instance, circular economy, which we need, and it's really high known. And this, I think, we have to go beyond CO2 emissions. We have to really price in life cycle analysis. And I think we are missing that so much, and we have to be working on obligations for the retail mainly, that they are focusing on these products, because otherwise B2B, I mean, it's doing a lot, you know, but most of the time is a wait and see position. So
actually, it's about getting prices right. And
Yes,
then
absolutely.
a lot of things will happen just automatically, because companies simply work on the basis of prices, profits, market shares. And if the price signals, the market signals are simply wrong, then everything is wrong. And we cannot push for any kind of doing good while doing well is depending on the prices.
Absolutely. So what we learned, what Doug and myself learned at the business school, I think that it needs a revision. It's not that the bottom right, let's say, number is the most important in the world. You know, it comes to management systems. You have to reward systems for management, not just on the right bottom top number. It has to really to plug in different aspects and different evaluations of factors for the environment.
Thank you very much. Joachim von Heimburg, he wrote quite long but very well elaborated posting on what it means, responsible innovation, that I really like and share, and I know him from one of the interviews we carried out in the course of the Living Innovation Project. So I think we're quite well aligned in our understanding. I learned a lot from him. So it's about an insurance. The responsible innovation is the insurance against big losses, right?
Good afternoon first, from Switzerland. I use the word insurance because that is the simplest way to build the general bridge to business. The insurance means really thinking about the challenge businesses experience, that they are losing their societal license to do business as long as they are complying with all regulations and good citizens in a legal term. They are now mistrusted, they are not believed, they are kind of second questioned. So a lot of things are going slower, are more expensive, or are even not touched anymore because it's deemed to be too big an issue. Think about buyer's miscalculation about the effect of taking over Monsanto. Not from the business case in the classical sense was excellent. The business case from a societal acceptance was a disaster. And the fact that they completely missed the two worlds is exactly the point, which says innovation, and there is a lot of innovation coming from this merger or takeover better, is more than just a financial and business strategy activity. So if the first step, if you think about responsible innovation, is you have to take stakeholders into account and think about their value. So what it requires is a broader view on what is value beyond monetary terms. Because if you make more money, that's value for you. If you destroy a neighborhood, or you are perceived to destroy a neighborhood, whether you actually do it is even another question. Is destroying value for others who can get into the way and can make your life really miserable, and actually at the end also risks your financial rewards. So it means if you are working responsibly in a climate of mistrust and doubt, it is a kind of insurance. Once you have done that long enough, I think the real vision should be to recreate credibility and also appreciation of the company as an element of society, helping to solve the big issues which we are having in front of us. Without industry, we won't solve the climate change issues. We all know this. So, but first comes the business of we have to recreate trust and credibility, and then comes the benefit of you can move faster. You can move with less challenges to take into account, and you increase the standing and the equity of your products.
You said it's about an insurance, you said it's about trust, it's about credibility. Do you think there are methods out there how a company can really evaluate future impacts of a new technology or a new product? Because during the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of methods that tell companies engage with stakeholders, open innovation, participatory co-creation, hundreds of methods and thousands of consultants promise that companies will then be much more creative. That's one part of the business case. The other part is about the risks, is about the damages, it's about the precautionary principle, it's about making sure that you do not lose a hell lot of money. And there I didn't find so many tools that a company could simply apply, push a button and say, okay, risk calculation, so and so many millions of euros or dollars, just like an insurance would calculate it. Are you aware of such kind of tools?
There are tools, but you have to I wouldn't say redesign them, but recommission them to use them properly. For instance, take the value of the equity of your brands. You can measure how this value is.
Oh, I think we lost Joachim.
Sorry,
Yep.
somehow the sound kind of fell off. You have to recommission some of the value indicators and measurements for a company to get a feel for, is it worth doing? Let's take the equity, the value of the equity of your key brand. That is something which is very well established method to monetize. But you have to think about it, first of all, from a development, how does it go over time? And secondly, in which groups are you doing what? Because if different groups will have a different impact on that value, not on a monetary term, but on a damaging term. So it is much more difficult if a million people loves your product, but key NGOs in your area hate your product, you have a much harder time to create value with your equity than if the NGOs which are of relevance for you are also at least neutral or even supporting what you're doing. So that's one thing. You have to recommission the tools, but they are existing. The second point is lead time, and I would call them permissions to rethink and vision. What a good example for that is nuclear industry. Nuclear industry, you all knew that it is the best you can do, at least what we can do on a large scale as far as CO2 is concerned, to create energy which is not completely renewable, but we don't have a shortage of uranium, and it doesn't create any CO2. But it was not clearly positioned as a possibility to deal with the emerging issue of the climate change, because we didn't see it or we didn't want to see it. That's now kind of water under the bridge to talk about. But the point is, if you think about the societal value of your approach to business beyond the pure monetary terms, you can also have a long-term perspective, whether it's worth doing from a strategic point of view, whether to keep the finger in the pie. For instance, I think it was a big mistake that Germany went out of nuclear industry head over heels at the time of Fukushima and destroying all the bridges behind it. I think the option which was done by France was much smarter, to keep the option, and they could still further wind down the industry. And Switzerland is, as you know, rethinking whether they should close the two running nuclear power plants that are still in service. So,
well, I think when we start discussing now climate change, we might take some time. And if we start discussing nuclear power, we also might run out of time. But you said something very interesting. You talked about value, and which I think is very important, because when we talk about impacts, future impacts, I get the impression that in different countries, impacts is perceived as a positive term or as a negative term. It's very funny that when you talk to German and Austrian CEOs, they like to say, I have an impact. They feel in power, they feel strong, they feel as leaders. If you talk to Americans, impact always sounds a little bit like the movie Deep Impact, or something that hits the globe and destroys the dinosaurs. And to my impression, value is a much more nicer term in business languages. You don't talk about impacts, positive impacts, negative impacts, you talk about value. And I think that's very, very important. Thank you very much. I've seen that we have René Schomberg with us, and I would like to take the opportunity of our last minutes of this talk also to ask him, as one of the founding fathers of the idea of responsible research innovation, for his takeaways from the session today and from his view on the business case for responsible innovation. René, great to have you here.
Hello, Andre. It's very good to see you, and congratulations with your project. You facilitated not only today but a whole range of interesting events. So I'm glad to be able to participate. I think if I may use COVID again, as a reference, I think. The COVID case shows both the promise of responsible innovation and its challenge. It shows the promise because we have seen data and knowledge sharing among scientists in an unprecedented way, ignoring this time, their publication rights or whatever, IPR rights, and share information very quickly and so on. We have also seen that industry has stepped somewhat out of their shadow to work together. If they wouldn't have done so, we would not have had a vaccine in 1 year. We would have had it maybe at earliest at 10 years if it would have been business as usual. So it has a promise, and still there is a challenge. I think the challenge shows here clearly that the companies, in this case, the pharmaceutical companies, would never, ever have produced such a vaccine if they would not have been subsidized with billions of dollars and euros. And this shows the case. I think this was a little bit a double message this afternoon from your minister, in fact. One part of the talk was very classical in terms of Europe has to become a big player and we have to create jobs and so on. But I think this is not a road to responsible innovation, because this has actually got us to the problems which we are now saw in the case of COVID. What I would like to see is that citizens don't become just object of change, but subject of change. And that means we have to drive innovation to a particular direction. In this case, you can say a COVID vaccine is a global good. It should be a global good. In fact, it isn't yet, but it should be a global good, accessible for everybody. And we can only produce global goods if companies, of course, have to step outside of the shadow. It means it presumes a sort of cooperation which is not natural to them. And this is only possible if public authorities like the Commission or other authorities becomes also more proactive by enabling these actors to create a field in which this is fostered. And this has, of course, sometimes legislative implications in terms of regulations, but it has also to go beyond that, because legislation will not enforce a direction of innovation. This can only be done by enabling the involvement of a broader set of stakeholders. We only know what are social desirable impacts by asking the people or engaging them. So there is no other way beyond it. And I think this is, and that was the other message which your minister gives. He pointed rightly out to the emissions. I think that's the first experiment, I would almost say, at a global level. I think we haven't precedence of this, that we organize research missions about societal impacts, societal outcomes, not only technological ones. And that means that indeed, if you talk about sustainability, you cannot have the best company to have the best innovation. What you need is the companies work together with a common view of what we want to achieve. So, and that's the new thing, and that's in itself an innovation. And this is why I have called for responsible innovation as a new innovation paradigm, which puts social desirable change as at its top priority rather than competitiveness. I'm not saying that we have to do away with competitiveness, but it changes when it comes to transformative change. We have to change the priority here, and this is in very short my message.
I think it goes very much in line with what we heard before about innovation ecosystems, co-designing whole systems. I think what we see with these big societal challenges, it's not a question of one group of actors. It's not a question that we can simply push to the consumers and say, you have to change, the rest will follow, or to the policymakers and to say, you have to do it, the rest will follow. I think we have to do it together. And this means really radical innovation on all 3, 4 different pillars: policy, business, citizens, and with the support of science. Thank you, René.
Thank you, André.
Just a few words at the end of this session. If you're interested in what we've done in the Living Innovation Project, there are about 100 video interviews with René von Schomberg, with Joachim, and with many others that you saw today, and many others that are very interesting to watch. We ran 20 webinars and online dialogues on highly interesting topics as remote working, as the challenge of remote teaching, and so on. We will have 10 responsible innovation showcases that we will publish week by week now onwards. There is a guidance for workshops with blind people, quite specific, but very interesting if you facilitate workshops, innovation workshops with people with special needs. And we have a co-creation toolkit. This co-creation toolkit, you can download it for free. It's a guidance document how to design, develop, and implement co-creation strategies, co-creation exercises, co-creation workshops in industry city collaboration settings. So if you're interested in co-creation, this is a very crisp and smart toolkit that you can apply. You can download it for free. There will be 3 more sessions organized by the Living Innovation Project during this week. So every day in the afternoon, the Responsible Innovation Summit allowed us to design and to implement a session of 1.5 hours. So same time tomorrow, it will be about how to put responsible innovation into practice. On Thursday, it's about inclusive innovation. And on Friday, there will be a session on smart future living and responsible innovation. So it's about how we will live in 2030. And we will also have a youth panel discussing with us. At the end of this session, we would like to ask you for a very short feedback. We will put 3 questions into the Zoom session. We would like to know which group of organization, which affiliation you have. Just click this, please, how interesting you found this session and what your attitude towards responsible research and innovation is now. Is it positive, neutral, negative, or you have not any opinion? It's just a simple click, takes 2 minutes, and it helps us a lot because we also would like to know who you are, what your attitudes are, and how interesting this topic was for you. So take a moment, click. Okay, so that's from my side today. If you would like to stay in touch with the Living Innovation Project, please sign up at our community platform. You find the link here. If you by now, nearly 2,000 experts, innovation managers, innovators, and business leaders and CSR managers from all around the world signed up for this community. We exchange experiences, we develop interesting insights. So if you want to stay connected, please sign up at the Living Innovation Project, and we will see each other tomorrow in the morning with the Responsible Innovation Summit and at 2 o'clock Central European Summer Time with our next session hosted and organized by the Living Innovation Project. Thank you very much for taking part today. Have a good evening. Have a good morning wherever you are. Goodbye.